In the age when the sky had 9 layers and the earth had 7, when a human's breath could be heard by spirits, and a dream could spill into daylight like ink into water, the steppe was not merely land. It was a living memory. The wind carried old names. The grass hid footprints as if it had sworn loyalty to silence. And the night, especially the night, was a door that did not always stay closed. A man walked those plains alone. His name was Aruk. Some called him Alp Aruk out of habit, because his shoulders were broad and his gaze was steady, and he carried himself like someone who once belonged to warriors and banners. But Aruk no longer had a tribe to return to, no hearth that expected his shadow at the edge of firelight. He had become a traveler by necessity, not by desire, and the steppe accepted him the way it accepts a lone wolf, with distance, with respect, and with a warning hidden in the cold. Aruk's curse was simple to describe and impossible to ignore. His shadow did not obey him. At first it was small things. In the evening, when the sun crawled low and the world turned bronze, Aruk would see his shadow hesitate behind him, as if it needed a moment to remember what it was. He would stop, and it would stop a breath too late. He would turn quickly, and it would bend in the wrong direction, stretching not toward him but away, as though it were pulled by another gravity. He told himself that fatigue could make a man imagine such things. He told himself that the steppe played tricks, that the eyes grew strange when too many nights passed without a familiar roof. But then the dreams began, dreams that left scratches on his mind like claws on wood. In those dreams he stood on a plain that looked like his own, but the stars were wrong. The moon hung too close, swollen and dim, as if it were a dying ember. The wind spoke in a voice that was not the wind, and somewhere behind him, always behind him, something followed without footsteps. He would run, his lungs burning, his heart hammering, the grass whipping at his legs. He would try to look back and his neck would refuse him, stiff as frozen leather. Then he would hear it, his own name, spoken softly from the dark. Aruk. The sound was intimate, like a breath against the ear, like someone who had known him long before he knew himself. He always woke before he could see what chased him. Always. His hands would be clenched, nails biting into his palms. His chest would rise and fall as if he had truly run. And sometimes, when he lit a fire and forced himself to sit upright, he could feel the darkness leaning in around the edges of the flame, watching, waiting. Aruk learned to sleep lightly. He learned to keep a knife near his hand, though no blade could cut a nightmare. He learned to greet dawn the way a shipwrecked man greets land, with relief, with disbelief, with exhaustion. But the curse traveled with him. It followed him into the camps of strangers where he traded work for food. It followed him into villages where old women made the sign against evil when he passed, and children stared too long at his feet, as if they could see the wrongness there. It followed him into the highlands where the air grew thin and the rocks seemed to listen. One night, hunger drove him to a lonely yurt set apart from others, a circle of felt and smoke sitting like a quiet eye on the plain. An old man lived there, white-haired, spine bent, eyes clear as winter water. A calm, a shaman, one of the last who still spoke to the unseen with more than fear. Aruk did not like to seek such men. They had a way of looking through skin and bone into what a person tried to keep hidden. But the dreams had grown heavier. The shadow had grown bolder. And Aruk had begun to feel something he could not name. Not merely being watched, but being claimed. The calm welcomed him without surprise, as if Aruk's arrival had been written somewhere already. They sat by the fire. The old man made tea that tasted of bitter roots and smoke. He did not ask where Aruk came from. He did not ask where Aruk was going. He asked only one thing. Does your shadow obey you? Aruk's grip tightened around the warm bowl. Why do you ask that? The calm's gaze flicked down, not to Aruk's face, but to the ground beside him. To the shape that should have been a simple echo of Aruk's body. Aruk looked too. The fire threw his silhouette on the felt wall, tall and sharp. But beside it, another shadow lay like spilled ink, wrong in its angles, too long in the arms, too narrow in the head. It looked almost human, but not quite. It looked like a man with something missing, or a man with something added. Aruk felt his stomach drop. "I thought," he began and stopped. There were no words that did not sound like madness. The calm nodded slowly, as if Aruk's silence was answer enough. "Black İye," the old man said. The name hit the air like a stone thrown into still water. Aruk had heard it in childhood stories, told to frighten boys into obedience. He had heard it in whispers from soldiers around late fires. He had heard it once from a mother who lost her child in the night and never found more than a small footprint near the river. Black İye was not one thing in those stories. It was an idea, darkness that had teeth, fear that had a will. "What is it?" Aruk asked, though he already feared the answer. "A spirit," the calm said, "or a force, or a hunger. It takes shape where humans hide themselves from themselves. It is older than your tribe, older than the iron in your knife. It is not always evil, but it is never gentle. It feeds on what you refuse to see." Aruk swallowed. "I have done nothing to call it." The calm's face softened, not with pity, but with a kind of hard understanding. "Calling is not always done with words," he said. "Sometimes you call with silence. Sometimes you call by pushing pain down until it has nowhere to go but outward." Aruk's throat tightened, as if something unseen had placed a hand there. "What does it want from me?" The calm leaned closer. The firelight made deep valleys in his aged face. "It wants what it always wants," he said. "To be acknowledged, to be fed, or to be bound. Those are your choices. If you keep running, it will grow. If you try to fight it like an enemy, you will make it stronger. If you face it, then you will learn whether your curse is a punishment or a calling." Aruk wanted to laugh, but no sound came. He felt suddenly cold despite the fire. "How do I face it?" The calm lifted his hand and traced a circle in the air, as if drawing a sign only spirits could read. "There is a place where the worlds touch," he said, "where the stepp's skin is thin, where even the sky seems to hold its breath. Demir Da, the Iron Mountain." Aruk's blood turned slow. Demir Da was a name that lived in myth. Some said it was the mountain that once trapped a people until they melted iron and broke free. Some said it was the backbone of the world, a ridge that held the earth from splitting apart. Some said you could hear your ancestors there if you listened with more than ears. "And if I go there?" Aruk asked. The calm's eyes did not blink. "Then what follows, you will show its face," he said. "And you will have to decide what kind of man you are when there is no one left to blame." Aruk left the yurt before dawn. He did not thank the calm. He did not threaten him for speaking curses aloud. He simply left, because staying would have been worse than walking into the unknown. For days he traveled east. The land became rougher, the grass shorter, the wind sharper. He passed herds and lonely hunters who watched him with suspicion. He slept under the open sky and tried not to dream, but the dreams came anyway. They grew clearer, more deliberate. In them, the Iron Mountain rose in the distance, black and shining like a blade. In them, Aruk heard his name spoken with a strange tenderness, as if the darkness loved him in its own way. On the seventh night, the sky changed. The moon began to dim, as if a giant hand were closing over it. Stars faded. The world took on a bruised color, neither night nor day. The wind stopped entirely, and in that unnatural stillness, Aruk heard his own heartbeat like a drum. An eclipse. The old stories said eclipses were the moments when the sky's guardians looked away and other things were free to move. Aruk stood. The hair on his arms rose. He did not know how he knew, but he knew. This was the night. He walked until the ground began to rise, until the plain turned into stone, and the stone into jagged slopes. He walked until the iron mountain stood above him, vast and silent, a shape that made the world feel small. There was no snow on it, though the air was cold. There were no birds. Even the insects were quiet. At the base of Demir Dağ, Aruk found something that should not have been there. An old stone circle half buried in earth, carved with marks that resembled runes, but were older than any writing he knew. In the center lay a shallow depression like a bowl in the rock, dark with ancient soot. A fire pit. Aruk set his pack down. His hands moved without thought. He gathered dry brush, splintered wood, and placed them in the depression. He struck flint. Sparks leapt. Flame caught, small at first, then steady. The light painted the stones gold, and beyond that gold was darkness so thick it felt like a wall. He sat across from the fire. For a long time, nothing happened. Then his shadow moved. It did not stretch or sway. It lifted. It rose from the ground like smoke becoming a body. It stood on the far side of the fire, facing him, taller than Aruk, narrower in the shoulders, too long in the arms. The darkness that shaped it was not empty. It had weight. It had intention. Where a face should have been, there was a void. Yet Aruk felt eye on him, fixed, assessing. The fire crackled between them like a border. "You came," a voice said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. It spoke inside Aruk's skull, under his thoughts, in a place he could not close. Aruk gripped his knife, though he did not draw it. "What are you?" he demanded. The shadow tilted its head in a movement that was almost human. "You know," it said. "You have known for a long time. I am the name you refused to speak. I am the truth you buried. I am the one you meet when there is nowhere left to run." "Black İye," Aruk whispered. The shadow's shape sharpened, as if pleased. "Yes," it said. "And you are mine." Aruk's throat tightened with anger. "I am no one's," he said. The shadow's voice carried something like amusement, though it was colder than humor. "That is what all humans say," it replied, "until they discover the chains they forged themselves." Aruk forced himself to breathe. "If you feed on fear," he said, "then you will starve. I will not fear you." The fire popped. A spark flew up and died. The shadow leaned closer. "Fear is only one flavor," it said. "I taste your guilt, your regret, your rage, the grief you swallowed until it became stone in your chest. Do you think those are not food?" Aruk felt heat rise behind his eyes. Memories surged, too fast, too sharp. A boy's laughter cut short, a night of shouting, a blade drawn in panic, blood on hands that had not meant to spill it, a face turning away in disgust, a father's last look, not anger, but disappointment. Aruk clenched his jaw until it hurt. "You are lying," he said. The shadow's voice softened, almost tender. "I do not need to lie," it said. "You lie enough for both of us." Aruk's hands trembled. He hated that it could touch him without touching him. He hated that his body believed it. "What do you want?" he asked, and the words came out hoarse. The shadow straightened. "I want what I was denied," it said. "A place in you, a name, a seat by your fire." Aruk's laugh came out harsh. "You want to live in me?" "I already do," the shadow said simply. "I have lived in you since the first time you decided you would rather be numb than honest." I have lived in you since the first time you said, "It is not my fault," while your spirit screamed otherwise. Aruk's knuckles whitened around the knife handle. "If you are in me," he said, "then why haunt me? Why chase me in dreams?" "Because you keep pretending I do not exist," Iye replied. "And when a thing is denied, it grows wild. You abandoned your own shadow like a starving dog. Now it has teeth." The words hit Aruk like wind off ice. He stared into the fire. The flames swayed, as if listening. "What happens if I accept you?" he asked. Iye's darkness rippled. "Then you stop bleeding into the night," it said. "Then your dreams become yours. Then you become whole." "And if I refuse?" The shadow's voice sharpened. "Then I will follow you until you are too tired to run," it said. "I will whisper in every silence. I will press on your chest while you sleep. I will turn every fear into a doorway. And one day, you will open that door whether you wish to or not." Aruk felt something inside him crack. Not fear, not exactly. A breaking of the last illusion that he could outrun himself. He stood, forcing his legs not to shake. "What is your price?" he asked. "Nothing comes without a price." Iye's voice grew low. "Truth," it said, "and the courage to carry it." Aruk shook his head. "Truth is not a price," he said. "It is a wound." "Then pay with bloodless pain," the shadow answered. "Pay with the pain you avoided. Sit in it. Name it. Stop pretending you are only the brave parts of you." Aruk wanted to spit, to curse, to strike at the darkness with steel. But something in him, something older than pride, recognized that the shadow was not entirely outside him. To stab it would be to stab himself. To deny it would be to continue the war that had already ruined his sleep, his peace, his belonging. He looked up at the black mountain looming behind the shadow. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why did you choose me?" Iye did not answer immediately. For the first time, it seemed to hesitate, as if the question touched something even it could not mock. "Because you are already half mine," it said at last. "Because you are strong enough to survive what weaker men would break under. Because your pain is deep. Deep pain makes deep doors." Aruk swallowed. "And if I accept," he said, "what do I become?" The shadow's voice was steady. Aruk opened his eyes, staring. "It creates me," Iye said. The fire hissed as a log collapsed, sending sparks upward like tiny fleeing souls. Aruk's mouth tasted like iron. "So what now?" he asked. "You show me this so I drown in it?" "No," Iye said. "I show you so you stop drowning in the dark and start swimming in daylight." Aruk looked at his hands, calloused, scarred, human. He thought of all the nights he had sat alone, staring into fires, waiting for morning. He thought of the endless running, the constant leaving. He realized he had never truly lived since the river. He had only survived. "What do you want me to do?" Aruk asked, voice barely above a whisper. Iye stepped closer to the fire, until it seemed the light and the darkness were touching. "Name it," it said. "Say it without excuses. Say it without turning away. Speak the truth you tried to bury." Aruk's throat tightened. The words felt like stones in his mouth. He looked into the fire and forced himself to speak. I failed my brother, he said. Black İye did not move. Aruk's hands curled into fists. I killed my friend, he said. The flames flared, as if the fire itself exhaled. Aruk's breath shook. I ran, he said. I ran from my mother's eyes. I ran from my tribe. I ran from the man I became. I ran because I thought if I kept moving, the past could not catch me. His voice cracked. He swallowed and continued. I turned myself into a blade, he said, because blades don't have to feel. But I am not a blade. I am a man, and I have been terrified of being a man. Silence pressed in. Then Black İye spoke, and in the voice there was something new. Not kindness, but recognition. Good, it said. Aruk stared at it, anger rising again. Good? He spat. That's all? I confess and you say good? Black İye's eyes, if they were eyes, seemed to sharpen. Do you think truth is small? It asked. Truth is a gate. Most die outside it, begging for lies. You stepped through. Aruk's breath slowed. His heartbeat still thundered, but something inside him loosened, like a knot being undone. What happens now? He asked again, quieter. Black İye held out what could have been a hand, though it was only darkness shaped like one. Now you choose, it said. You can keep me outside you, and I will keep tearing at your sleep. Or you can take me in, bind me with your will, and carry me with eyes open. Aruk's skin crawled at the thought of letting that thing inside him. Yet another part of him, small but steady, recognized that it was already inside, only unacknowledged. A poison you refused to admit you drank would still kill you. A wound you refused to clean would still rot. If I bind you, Aruk said, what do I become? Black İye's voice grew low, almost reverent. You become Karakam, it said, a shaman of the shadow, a man who walks between light and dark without being devoured. You become someone who can see what others hide. You become someone who can guide them when their own shadows rise. Aruk swallowed. You want me to serve you? Black İye's darkness rippled again, as if it were smiling. No, it said. I want you to stop serving fear. I do not need worship. I need a place, a boundary, a name. Humans always fear what they cannot name. Name me, and you hold me. Aruk stared at the offered hand. The fire crackled, steady and patient. What is the cost? He asked. Black İye's voice was immediate. Honesty, it said. Every time you try to lie to yourself, I will burn you with your own truth. Every time you try to numb your heart, I will whisper until you listen. You will not get to be asleep in your own life again. Aruk's lips parted. He imagined the pain of constant awareness. He imagined never hiding, never escaping. It sounded like torture. And yet running had been its own torture for years. He thought of the calm. He thought of the step. He thought of his brother's face in the river, how it had looked less accusing than frightened. He thought of his mother's emptiness and realized he had never mourned properly. He thought of his friend dying and realized he had never allowed himself to be forgiven or unforgiven. He had simply fled. He lifted his chin. "I accept," he said, and the words fell into the night like a promise. Iye's hand moved forward. When darkness touched Aruk, it was not like being grabbed. It was like being entered by winter air. Cold rushed into his bones, into his lungs, into his mind. Aruk gasped. His vision flashed white, then black, then a storm of images. He felt his own heartbeat become a drumbeat, not his alone, but echoing with something older. He wanted to scream. He wanted to pull away, but he did not. He gripped the darkness as if it were a rope and held on. The pain came like fire under the skin, not burning outward, but burning inward, burning away the soft lies, burning away the numbness he had wrapped himself in. Aruk felt himself splitting. Then he felt himself joining. A pressure in his chest released. A constant tension he had not even recognized vanished. He inhaled deeply, and the air tasted sharper, cleaner, as if the world had gained detail. He fell forward, hands in dirt, breathing hard. The fire was still there. The mountain was still there. The eclipse still covered the moon. But something had changed. Aruk looked down. His shadow lay on the ground like it should, attached, obedient, human-shaped. Yet Aruk could feel it, like a second heartbeat beneath his own. Not an enemy now. A presence, a weight, a companion, a warning. He heard Iye inside him, not in words, but in a sensation like cold iron resting against the spine. "You are awake now." Aruk stood slowly. He expected to feel haunted. Instead, he felt quiet. Not empty, but quiet the way a forest is quiet after a storm passes. He gathered his things, but he did not hurry. For the first time in years, he did not feel the urge to outrun the horizon. He left Demir Da as the eclipse ended and moonlight returned, pale and fragile. The steppe spread out before him, and he realized he had never truly seen it. Not like this. The grass was not just grass. It was 1,000 blades breathing together. The wind was not just wind. It carried faint voices, old laughter, the creak of distant wagons, the hum of sleeping earth. As Aruk walked, he began to notice things others might overlook. A crow perched on a stone, watching him with eyes too knowing. A stray dog that did not bark, only stared, head tilted, as if it recognized something in him. A patch of ground where the air felt heavier, as if a grief had soaked into the soil. He was not imagining. He knew he was not. The world had always been layered. He had simply been blind to the deeper layers. Days later, he came to a small settlement near a river. The people there were wary, worn by hard seasons. They looked at Aruk's clothes, his scars, his steady walk, and they saw a warrior. They did not see the shadow inside him, but a child did. A girl of perhaps 9 stood near a fence, staring at Aruk as he approached. Her eyes were too big for her face, her cheeks too hollow. When Aruk passed, she flinched. Aruk stopped. "What is it?" he asked gently. The girl swallowed. "The night talks to you," she whispered. Aruk felt Iye stir like a sleeping beast lifting its head. "What did the night say to you?" Aruk asked. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "It says my brother won't come back," she said. "It says he's lost in the dark under the water. It says it's my fault because I let go." Arek's chest tightened so hard it hurt. The river, the slipping, the helplessness. It came rushing back. He knelt so he was at her height. "It is not your fault," he said, and he meant it with a force that surprised him. The girl shook her head violently. "I saw him," she cried. "I saw his hand. I saw his face. He called me, and I... She couldn't finish. Arek looked into her eyes and saw the same wound he had carried, the same poison of guilt. He felt Kara Iye's presence, cold and alert. "You see," it seemed to say, "this is why you live now." Arek stood and asked the villagers what happened. They told him a boy fell into the river days ago. They searched, found nothing. The mother had stopped speaking. The father drank until his eyes went dull. The village had begun to whisper about bad spirits. Arek asked to speak to the mother. They led him to a small hut. The woman inside sat on the floor, staring at nothing. Her hair was uncombed. Her hands were still, as if movement would be too much. Arek entered quietly. The woman's eyes flicked to him, then away. "You're another one," she said flatly. "Another man who will tell me to pray. Another man who will say, 'He is with the ancestors.' Another man who will leave." Arek sat across from her, not too close. "I won't tell you to pray," he said. The woman laughed without humor. "Then why are you here?" Arek took a breath. He felt the shadow inside him listening. "Because I know what it is," he said. "To have a river take someone and leave you with only your own thoughts as company." The woman's gaze snapped back to him. Something in her face shifted. "You lost someone," she said, not as a question. Arek nodded. "My brother," he said, "long ago." The woman's lips parted. Her eyes shimmered. "And you never got him back," she whispered. "No," Arek said. The woman's shoulders sagged. "Then you can't help me," she said, breaking. Aruk leaned forward slightly. "I can't bring him back," he said, "but I can help you stop dying with him." The words hung in the air. The woman stared as if she had been slapped and blessed at once. Aruk continued, choosing each word carefully. "There is a spirit that feeds on guilt," he said. "It whispers in the dark. It tells you you are the reason. It tells you it will never end. It grows when you believe it." The woman's eyes narrowed with fear. "Are you saying I'm cursed?" Aruk shook his head. "I'm saying grief is a doorway," he replied. "And something is standing in your doorway, using your pain as food." The woman's breath caught. She clutched her own arms. "What do I do?" she asked, and the question was so small it could have belonged to a child. Aruk closed his eyes for a moment. He felt Kara Iye inside him, not hostile, but present like a blade sheathed at his spine. Then he opened his eyes and spoke. "You name your grief," he said. "You speak it, out loud, not to the sky, not to your neighbors, to yourself." The woman's mouth trembled. "I can't," she whispered. "If I speak it, it becomes real." Aruk's voice softened. "It is already real," he said. "Speaking it doesn't create it. Speaking it gives you a handle to hold." The woman stared at him. Tears slid down her cheeks without sound. Aruk waited. He did not rush her. He had learned on Demir Da that truth comes when it is ready, not when it is forced. Finally, the woman's voice came, thin as smoke. "My son is gone," she said, "and I hate myself because I couldn't stop it." Her shoulders shook. She covered her face and sobbed, a sound like a dam breaking. Aruk sat with her. He did not offer quick comfort. He let the grief be what it was, a storm that had to pass through rather than be sealed inside. When her sobbing slowed, Aruk spoke again, quietly. "You loved him," he said. "That is why it hurts. Love is not weakness. It is proof you are alive." The woman looked up, eyes red. "I don't want to be alive," she admitted. Aruk's chest tightened. "I know," he said, "but you are. So we find a way to carry it." Outside, the river flowed, indifferent and ancient. Aruk left the hut as evening came. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man doing what he should have done long ago, facing the shadows instead of feeding them. Word spread quickly in the village. People came with stories, nightmares, panic, unexplained dread, a sense of being followed. Aruk listened. He did not claim he could cure everything. He did not pretend the world was simple. He told them a hard truth. The darkness outside is less dangerous than the darkness you refuse to see. Some left angry. Some left relieved. Some left silent, carrying new thoughts. Aruk stayed 3 nights. On the 3rd night, a young man approached him by the fire. "I saw my father's face in the dark," the young man said. "He died last winter. I thought it was him, but when I reached out, it laughed." Aruk's eyes narrowed. "Where?" he asked. "By the old willow near the river," the young man said. Aruk stood. He walked to the willow alone. The tree bent over the water like an old woman listening. The air around it felt heavy, like damp cloth. The moon was thin. Shadows pooled beneath the branches. Aruk felt Iye rise inside him, alert and sharp. Something is here. Aruk stepped closer to the trunk. The bark was scarred with old carvings, names, prayers, curses. Then the darkness beneath the tree shifted. A shape formed, low to the ground at first, then taller. Not fully human, not fully beast. Its face was wrong, its eyes too bright. It smelled like wet earth and rot and old fear. It smiled at Aruk. "Another one," it hissed. "Another man who thinks he owns his shadow." Aruk did not flinch. He felt the presence inside him like cold steel. "What are you?" Aruk asked. The thing laughed softly. "I am what's left when a soul forgets itself," it said. "I am the hunger between worlds." Aruk recognized it, not by name but by sensation. A lesser spirit, drawn to sorrow, feeding where grief was unguarded. "Leave this place," Aruk said. The spirit's smile widened. "Or what?" it taunted. "You'll stab me? You'll pray? You'll beg your sky god to save you?" Aruk's eyes stayed steady. "I won't beg," he said, "and I won't stab." He stepped forward. The spirit recoiled slightly, as if surprised by Aruk's lack of fear. Aruk spoke, not loudly, but with certainty. "I name you," he said. "You are a thief of mourning, a parasite of pain. You don't belong to the river, and you don't belong to these people." The spirit hissed. "You can't name me," it snapped. "You don't know my true—" "I don't need it," Aruk cut in. "Names are not only words. Names are boundaries." The air grew colder. The willow's leaves shivered. Aruk felt Iye inside him, and for the first time he understood. The shadow was not just his burden, it was also his strength. Not because darkness was good, but because acknowledging it gave him leverage over it. Aruk took one more step forward and let his own shadow stretch out beneath the tree. It moved with him like a loyal dog now, but it carried an ancient weight. The lesser spirit's eyes widened. It recognized Iye's presence. Fear flashed across its face, real fear. "You carry him," it whispered. Aruk's voice was calm. "I do," he said. "And because I do, I will not be fooled by you." The spirit snarled and lunged, fast as a striking snake. Aruk did not dodge. He simply stood firm and willed his shadow to rise. Darkness met darkness. The air cracked like a whip. The spirit slammed into an invisible wall, rebounded, shrieking. Its form flickered like a dying flame. It tried to reassemble, to bite, to claw. Aruk spoke again, voice low. "You feed on grief," he said. "But grief is not your feast. Grief is sacred. It belongs to love." The spirit writhed, smoke tearing from its edges. Aruk felt a pulse through his shadow, and with it came Iye's cold whisper. "Now." Aruk lifted his hand and drew a circle in the air, the same motion the calm had made. Not because he had learned it fully, but because his body remembered it from somewhere deeper. His shadow mirrored him. The circle tightened. The spirit screamed, a sound like wind through bones. Then it collapsed, imploding into itself, sucked down into the earth beneath the willow, as if the ground had opened its mouth. Silence returned. Aruk exhaled. He did not feel triumphant. He felt responsible. He returned to the village before dawn. He told no one about the spirit. He told them only that the willow was safe, and that the river would remain a river, nothing more. When he left the village, the mother came to him. Her eyes were still swollen, but there was a fragile steadiness in her posture. "I dreamed of him," she said. "I didn't feel terror. I felt sadness. But it was clean, like rain." Aruk nodded. "That's how it should be," he said. She hesitated, then asked softly, "What are you?" Aruk looked out at the plains. "A man learning to carry his shadow," he said. "Like everyone else. I'm just less able to pretend." The woman touched her chest as if to hold her own heart in place. "Thank you," she whispered. Aruk walked away, and the step, as if acknowledging a shift, opened before him like a road that had always been there. Seasons turned. Aruk traveled from place to place. Wherever grief gathered, wherever fear grew teeth, he found himself drawn. He slept under stars and listened to the world's older voices. Sometimes he helped. Sometimes he simply sat with the broken until they were less alone. He learned that not every darkness was a monster. Some darkness was a womb, a place where transformation began. He learned that spirits were not all evil or good. They were forces, like storms, like fire, like hunger. And within him, Iye remained. Not as a cruel tyrant, not as a demon to worship, but as a cold presence that demanded honesty and punished avoidance. When Aruk tried to numb himself, he would wake with a burning ache behind his ribs. When Aruk lied, only small lies even, his dreams would become heavy and suffocating. When Aruk faced pain directly, the world felt clearer. Slowly, the story of him spread. Some called him Karakam, others called him Shadow Walker. In a few places, children were warned to behave, or the Shadow Man would come. Aruk disliked those stories, but he understood why they formed. Humans turned what they feared into legends to make it less intimate. One winter, Aruk returned to the old Kam's yurt, the one who had sent him to Demir Dağ. The steppe was white. The air was sharp enough to cut. Smoke rose from the yurt in a thin line like a prayer. Aruk entered. The Kam was older, thinner, but his eyes still held winter water clarity. "You came back," the old man said. Aruk sat by the fire. "I wanted to see if you were real," Aruk said. The Kam chuckled softly. "Am I?" he asked. Aruk looked at his own hands, then at the fire. "I met him," Aruk said. "I bound him." The Kam's gaze flicked to Aruk's feet. "Your shadow sits differently," he observed. "Not chained, not feral, trained." Aruk's mouth tightened. "Trained is not the word," he said. "We made an agreement." The Kam nodded. "And what did he ask of you?" Aruk stared into the flames and spoke the truth, because he had learned truth was not optional anymore. "He asked me to stop sleeping through my life," Aruk said. "He asked me to carry what I avoided." The Kam's eyes softened. "Then he did not curse you," he said. "He woke you." Aruk's jaw clenched. "Waking hurts," he said. "Yes," the Kam replied, "but sleeping through pain doesn't erase it. It only makes it hunt you." Aruk's gaze lifted. "Why is he called Kara?" Aruk asked. "Why is he painted as evil in so many stories?" The Kam stirred the fire with a stick, sending sparks up. "Because humans fear their own depths," the old man said. "They call it evil so they can keep it outside. But the deepest darkness in a person is often only unprocessed grief, unnamed fear, unaccepted rage. Black İye rules what is rejected. He is not kind because kindness is not his function. He is a mirror that does not flatter." Aruk absorbed this in silence. The Kam poured tea. "Tell me," the old man said, "when you look at yourself now, what do you see?" Aruk considered. "I see a man who failed," he said, "and a man who survived. I see someone capable of harm and capable of healing. I see everything." The Kam nodded once. "Then you are becoming whole," he said. Aruk's eyes narrowed. "And if I ever slip," he asked, "if I ever deny again?" The Kam's gaze sharpened. "Then Black İye will remind you," he said. "And if you refuse the reminder enough times, the shadow will grow wild again. A pact is not a one-time act. It is a daily choice." Aruk exhaled. He stayed in the yurt for 2 nights. On the second night he dreamed, not of being chased, but of standing on the riverbank where his brother had fallen. In the dream, the water was calm. His brother's face appeared on the surface, not drowning, not frightened, simply present. Aruk knelt. "I'm sorry," he said. His brother smiled faintly, then sank away like a leaf drifting underwater. Aruk woke with tears on his face, but his chest felt lighter than it had in decades. He did not believe the dream was literally his brother. Perhaps it was only his mind finally granting itself permission to mourn. Perhaps it was something else. The difference mattered less than the result. In spring, Aruk left the Kam behind and resumed his wandering. Years passed. Aruk became known among certain circles, among those who still believed the world was layered, among those who had seen too much to trust only daylight. He was sought by people who felt haunted, who carried nightmares like stones in their bellies. He was not gentle. He did not tell them easy lies. He did not promise that light would solve everything. He taught them what Black İye had taught him, that darkness grows when you deny it, and shrinks when you name it. One night, a man came to him in a ruined caravanserai, trembling and sweaty though the air was cold. "I haven't slept in a month," the man said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see my hands. They're covered in blood. I wash them and the blood returns." Aruk studied him. "What did you do?" Aruk asked. The man shook. "I didn't do it," he insisted. I didn't. Aruk heard the lie before he knew he heard it. Not by magic, by the way the man's soul flinched from its own words. Aruk leaned in slightly. "Say it again," he said. The man's mouth worked. "I didn't," he began, and stopped, choking on the sentence. Aruk waited. The fire between them was small but steady. The man's shoulders collapsed. "I killed my cousin," he whispered. "Over a horse. Over pride. He begged me to stop and I didn't." His eyes filled with terror. "I can't take it back," he said. "I can't take it back." Aruk's voice was quiet. "No," he said, "you can't." The man flinched as if struck. Aruk continued. "But you can stop pretending you are innocent," he said, "because pretending is what keeps your hands bloody in your dreams." The man sobbed. "I deserve to suffer," he said. Aruk's gaze hardened. "Suffering is easy," he said. "It makes you feel like you're paying. Responsibility is harder. It requires you to live differently." The man looked up, desperate. "How?" he asked. Aruk pointed at the man's chest. "Start by carrying it awake," he said, "without excuses. Then go where your cousin is buried. Speak his name. Speak what you did. Speak what you regret. Not to be forgiven, but to stop lying. Then decide what kind of man you will be from today." The man trembled. "What if his spirit hates me?" he asked. Aruk's voice was firm. "Then let it hate you," he said. "Hatred is still a truth. Lies are what rot the soul." The man left before dawn. Aruk did not know whether he would change. Not everyone did. But Aruk had learned he could not carry other people's choices. He could only hold the door open long enough for them to see it. Sometimes, alone under the sky, Aruk would wonder whether Kara Iye had ever been separate from him at all. Sometimes he would feel the shadow inside him shift, like a wolf turning in sleep. Sometimes he would hear the faintest whisper when his thoughts began to slip into avoidance. "Do not turn away." And Aruk would straighten, breathe, and face whatever he was tempted to flee. In his later years, when his hair began to silver and his joints ached in winter, Aruk returned once more to Demirda. Not because the shadow had grown wild again, not because he was being chased, but because he wanted to stand at the place where he had been remade and see who he had become. He climbed the slope slowly. The mountain was still black and silent. The stone circle still waited at the base, half buried. Aruk lit a fire in the old depression and sat across from it. The night was clear. The stars were sharp as needles. Aruk spoke into the darkness, not to boast, not to complain, but to acknowledge. "I carried you," he said. The cold presence inside him stirred. And then, for the first time in many years, Kara Iye's voice answered him in words, inside the mind, calm and deep. "You carried yourself." Aruk let that settle. "What happens when I die?" he asked. The answer did not come immediately. Then, softly, "Then your shadow will return to the world's shadow. If you lived awake, it will not be hungry." Aruk smiled faintly. "And if I had kept running?" he asked. A pause, like wind holding breath. Then, "You would have become my meal." Aruk exhaled, staring at the fire. He remembered the boy in the river, the friend in the snow, the mother's hollow eyes. He remembered the years of running. He remembered the night the shadow rose across the fire and spoke his name like a lover and a threat. He realized something simple and harsh. Kara Iye had never been the true enemy. The enemy had been denial. Aruk fed the fire until it burned low. When the last ember glowed like a small red eye, he stood. He looked at his shadow on the ground, ordinary now, loyal, quiet. He spoke a final truth, not for the spirits, not for the mountain, but for himself. "I was never meant to be without darkness," he said. "I was meant to know it." He walked down from Demirda as dawn approached, the sky pale and new. The steppe opened before him, endless and indifferent and beautiful. And somewhere, in the border between night and morning, a whisper moved through the world. Not a curse, not a threat, but a reminder carried on the wind. If the dark calls your name, it may not be coming to destroy you. It may be coming to return you to yourself.